Imagine opening your phone tomorrow morning and seeing this alert. Large meteor impacts confirmed. Regional power outage. Communications disrupted. An emergency response underway. Sounds like science fiction, but just last week, residents across Boston area reported hearing a loud boom and seeing a bright fireball streak across the sky as a meteor entered Earth's atmosphere. While it ultimately posed no threat, it served as a reminder that our planet is constantly being approached by objects from space. And here's the reality. NASA tracks tens of thousands of near-Earth objects already. Every year, millions of meteors enter the Earth's atmosphere. Nearly all of them burn up harmlessly. Some explode in the atmosphere, and a few make it all the way to the ground. Occasionally, one gets close enough to remind us how vulnerable modern society really is. While the probability of a catastrophic impact is very low, the consequences could be enormous. Today, we're discussing the risk posed by near-Earth objects, how frequently they come close to our planet, the operational and societal consequences of a significant impact, and what leaders can learn about protecting their most important assets, their people. Remember to consider our key takeaways later in our discussion, because by applying them, you can gain competitive advantages in preparing for uncertainty. Hello, everyone. I'm Jerome Ryan, joined by Mike Janko for Impact Analysis. Mike, how often do meteors actually come this close to the Earth?
Most people assume meteors are extremely rare, but that's not the case. NASA currently tracks more than 37,000 near-Earth asteroids. Thousands of new objects are discovered every year. Scientists estimate approximately 100 tons of space debris enters Earth's atmosphere every day. Millions of meteors burn up annually, and dozens of objects pass between Earth and the Moon each year. Fortunately, most are small enough to disintegrate before reaching the surface. However, history shows larger impacts do occur. In 2013, there was a meteor that exploded over Russia. The blast released energy equivalent to hundreds of thousands of tons of TNT. It damaged thousands of buildings, injured more than 1,500 people, but remarkably, there was no direct impact. The injuries came primarily from shattered glass and secondary effects. And that's an important resilience lesson. Often the biggest damage doesn't occur from the primary event. It comes from the cascading consequences. Now, Jerome, I know you've had some recent personal experience with a meteor. Maybe you could share that with our viewers.
Yeah, that's right, Mike. So I live in the Boston area, in an area called the North Shore, so about 30 minutes drive north of the city. And we had the meteor streak across our sky and explode again a week ago. And here's my personal experience from it. I was sitting in the living room of my house. It was a Saturday afternoon around 2 p.m. And I heard a large explosion, and then the house actually shook. It shook as if maybe a car hit the house, or a small earthquake, or some sort of explosion nearby. So like most people these days, I went on to social media to see what was going on, to see if there was any reports. And there were lots of reports popping up that there was an explosion in a nearby town, which made sense to me because it was far enough away that, I could hear it, but it wasn't, on top of us. But as I was combing through additional social media reports, people were saying, oh, I felt it in Rhode Island, over 100 miles away from me. And other people, just different parts of, the New England area, reporting that they felt it. And about 20 or 30 minutes later, the news started to come out that this was a meteor that exploded somewhere over Cape Cod Bay area. Different reports say that it was traveling at between 45,000 and maybe 75,000 miles per hour. It was about a 3-foot wide meteor that exploded in the air, posing no threat to anybody, but that explosion and the speed of the meteor itself caused that massive sonic boom, which is what I heard as an explosion and the house shaking. So, with that personal anecdote, Earth exists in a cosmic shooting gallery. We've mentioned this, and according to astronomers, there's thousands of near-Earth objects already being monitored. Over 95% of them, of the large known asteroids, have been identified. The new objects continue to be discovered every year. So, consider some of these facts. A car-sized asteroid enters Earth's atmosphere approximately once every year. A football field-sized asteroid passes relatively close to Earth every few years. NASA's Planetary Defense Coordination Office, think about that as the business continuity office for the world, continually tracks objects that could pose future risks. Most never become threats. But risk management isn't about probability alone. It's also about consequences. And organizations routinely need to prepare for things like cyber attacks, pandemics, supply chain failures, weather, utility outage, things that we talk about quite often because they happen more often. Yet very few organizations have considered how a major meteor event could disrupt things like communications, transportations, energy systems, financial networks, emergency response capabilities. I can't imagine how many calls to 911 were received when the meteor exploded over the Boston area. The lesson isn't that an impact is likely. The lesson is that resilience requires thinking beyond those familiar risks.
So, Jerome, let's talk about the human impact leaders have to consider. One of the most overlooked aspects of resilience is our people. Your number one asset is not your technology, not your facilities, not your brand. It's your associates, employees, and their families. Imagine a significant atmospheric explosion or impact event. Employees could be at work, traveling, commuting, working remotely, at home with their families. The first question many leaders ask is, how do we continue operations? The better first question is, how do we account for our people? Because resilience starts with our people. The families may be separated, schools may close, transportation can be disrupted, communications could be overloaded, and emergency services may be stretched. Organizations that genuinely care about their workforce, they plan for these realities before they happen. This is why employee safety, accountability, and family preparedness must be the central component of every resilience program.
Yeah, and most meteor discussions focus on the impact itself. I mean, that's what Hollywood has kind of taught us over the years. But operational leaders should focus on the consequences, as you've mentioned. Consider what could happen if a significant event affected a populated region. Potential impacts include things like power outages, communications disruptions, transportation shutdowns, supply chain interruptions, internet degradation, satellite communication impacts, and emergency services overload. Manufacturing facilities could lose production capability. Biotech and pharmaceutical operations could face temporary temperature control issues and other clean room issues. Data centers could experience power instability. Healthcare systems could see a surge in demand. And financial institutions could face transaction disruptions. The question is not what if a meteor hits us directly. The question is how resilient are our critical systems, our critical infrastructure, if an unexpected high consequence event occurs. So here's a couple of the critical questions you need to think about. How quickly can we communicate with our employees? Can operations continue without power? Do we have alternate suppliers, both third-party suppliers and also power suppliers? Can critical systems fail over? Are our emergency plans current? Have leaders exercised decision-making under uncertainty? Because in many cases, the event starts externally, but the outcome is determined internally by preparedness, coordination, and of course, leadership.
So, Jerome, many of our listeners may never experience a meteor impact, but every organization faces new and novel, low probability, high impact risks. What if it's cybersecurity, AI failures, the pandemics, geopolitical instability, grid failures, weather, supply chain, etc.? The lesson's universal. The world changes quickly, very quickly. Many organizations didn't predict COVID-19, the Ukraine and Iran conflicts, global supply chain shortages, and a lot of these cyber extortion campaigns. The meteor risk reminds us that resilience is not about predicting every event. It's about preparing your organization to adapt regardless of what happens. Resilience is built through planning, training, exercises. Important thing is leadership engagement and the focus on continuous improvement and also caring for people first.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about our takeaways now. The meteor seen near Boston last week wasn't a disaster. It was a reminder. A reminder that our planet exists within a dynamic environment filled with uncertainties we don't fully control. Most people never think about it. Near Earth objects, planetary defense, space weather, or meteor impacts until something unexpected appears in the sky. And when it does, we are reminded how interconnected and dependent our modern world has become.
The organizations that navigate uncertainty best are not the ones that predict every threat. They're the ones that anticipate disruption, protect their people, communicate effectively, quickly adapt, and continuously improve regarding their preparedness. Thanks again for joining Jerome and me for today's leadership recap and key takeaways. Please share the value of every one of our messages with your colleagues and friends. Subscribe and like our Impact Analysis channel. And in closing, we remind all leaders, you can manage risk now or its consequences later. Hi, I'm Mike Janko, author of Excellence in Operational Resilience and co-host of the new YouTube channel, Impact Analysis. I wrote this book so you can learn of my journey of both personal and operational resilience. During my career as Goodyear's Director of Global Business Continuity and various leadership roles at both Nestle and Stouffer Hotels, we successfully managed through nearly 4,000 significant events and crises throughout the US, Latin America, Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Asia Pacific. A key takeaway during all those events was our teams performed the best when they were led by resilient leaders. My personal resilience is based on being an athlete, martial artist, and setting 2 world sit-up records. And a resilient leader does not allow themselves or their teams to fail. Operational resilience is not just about responding to crises. It's about leading teams to adapt, adjust, learn, and succeed through all types of events. If your organization wants to improve, I suggest you get my book, Excellence in Operational Resilience. After all, the only thing harder than being resilient is explaining why you aren't.